Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Full English Breakfast. We've got a packed show for you today. Got a bit more content than yesterday. I'm a bit more organized now. I'm back in the swing of things, so let's look forward to a good show. Of course, we're going to go for 2 hours again, as we did yesterday. First half being on YouTube, and then the second half will be on DLive exclusively. So make sure you're watching or following over there so you don't miss out on anything. So with that said and done, I think we'll say our good mornings to everybody. Let's see who's in chat. Over on DLive, obviously, we've got, I've got to say thank you to RY for the follow, Finn's Chemical Engineer for the follow, and Galileo's Tongue for the follow over there as well. Thank you, guys. We also got John Francis over there. We've got Roy Bob. We've got What Gorilla and Galileo's Tongue, as well as Hillman Avenger. Hello, DLive gang. Remember, guys, if you donate a diamond, I am legally obliged to open the chest. So that's something worth bearing in mind. Hello, Space Hopper Mark. Good to see you. Over on YouTube, we've got James Venner, Nora Larson. John Francis is here as well. We've got Silence is leading. Hello, Silence. Gavin Sandwiches here. We've also got Robin Chat, who says British Bunch. We've got Mr. Dodo in. Hello, Dodo. Hello, Morcar. Albion Society represent. Will RR's here. We've got Jess. We've got Space Hopper over here as well. We've got Anthony Redmond. Scottish Tam is reporting in. Hello. We've got Philomena as well. Hello, Philomena. All right, guys. All right. I hope you're ready. Because we're kicking off the show with an absolutely stinking article. Okay. I love this, right? It's from Vox. Now, if we don't know Vox, it's essentially, your classic internet clickbait, Vice News level journalism, right? Real lefty, clickbaity. Oh, look at the right wingers. Look at the Nazis. Wow, wow, wow. You know the drill, okay? Now, this article here, I chose to read this out, not because it makes any good points, and not because anything of worth is written here, except the fact that the way they describe Trump protesters is absolutely badass. They make it seem like the Trump protesters are just absolute chads, that embody the Faustian spirit. It's amazing, right? It's amazing. So I'll give it a read for you guys. Morning, Matt S. Morning, Batch D. Anyone else over on DLive? We've got Scottish Tams over there, Roy Bob. Okay. Let's give this a read then. You're going to love this. Because I woke up, I found this on my Twitter, I gave it a quick skim, and I thought, yeah, this is brilliant. This actually doesn't get any better. So obviously it's in reference to the Capitol Hill protest the other day, which I'm sure everyone's aware of. So Trump supporters rioted at Vox. Let's have a look at this. So the article begins with this lovely photo. I mean, this is beautiful. Look at this. Look at all of these faces. And a few cheeky skull bandanas thrown in the mix. So the article opens up. A white man, a smug grin on his face, hauls off a congressional lectern. Another sports a gun at his waist and carries zip ties as if prepared to take hostages. Yet another places his foot on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's desk before stealing a piece of her mail and leaving a handwritten note. We will not back down. Feces smeared throughout the federal building and blood on the marble bust of a former president nooses on Capitol Hill. These are images that captured on January the 6th when an enraged pro-Trump mob of hundreds flooded the gates of the US Capitol, America's fortress of democracy. Absolutely based. I mean, this is really good advertising. And what they show is a brazenness, a fearlessness, an entitlement to conquer and destroy. These Trump fanatics could do whatever they wanted, take whatever they wanted, and no one would dare stop them. Badass, man. I wish I was in that crowd. I wish I was in that group that took whatever they want, were conquerors and destroyers. They're really selling it here. They're really selling it here. Here's obviously the images that are in reference to. These are the conquerors and the destroyers. I love this one. This is the guy who stole the podium, right? You know, he just looks like an absolute Chad, like a barbarian at the gates, right? Absolutely amazing. Either way, so the article continues. It doesn't stay this good throughout. The rest of it's just clickbait, right? But we'll read it through anyway. An immediate concern from observers was how these insurrectionists, funny term to use to describe a peaceful protest, by the way, successfully breached a federal building that has its own police force of more than 2,000. The pro-Trump mob was in control on the outside and inside. Despite public announcements of a plan to take America back on January the 6th in DC even from the president himself, Capitol Police had not initially requested assistance from the DC National Guard or DC Police, according to the Washington Post, and they were outnumbered. Yeah, there was a lot of Trump protesters there. They definitely outnumbered the police. There was also a lot of Antifa protesters there. Now, obviously in the minority, but the majority of the aggravations and of the provocative behavior was actually seen from these Antifa groups, these Antifa infiltrators to the protest. People who are simply there to destabilize the political situation in America. And now, while Twitter might, prevent this information from getting out there, fact checkers will tell you, oh, there was no Antifa infiltration, which I remember distinctly seeing that paragraph posted at the top of the trending news page on Twitter, right? There was no Antifa present. Well, videos captured at the scene tell a different story. Anyway, a mere 69 people were arrested in DC on Wednesday night after the riots that temporarily halted the counting of Electoral College votes to certify President-elect Joe Biden's victory. Just 69 were arrested on site, despite widespread photos and footage of rioters bashing windows and scaling the walls of the Capitol grounds. In fact, in some video, officers can be seen holding the hands of the extremists and escorting them down the steps, holding the doors of the Capitol open for them to leave and taking selfies with them. Now, this could be for a number of reasons. Obviously, Vox would have you believe it's because the police are just as extreme right-wing Nazis as all of the Trump supporters present, but it could be for another reason. It could be that the police were purposefully letting them into the building in order to spin a kind of media narrative. That's one possibility. It's another possibility that the entrance was breached on one side of the building, and so at that point, the police, knowing that they were outnumbered, had to take a judgment call for their own safety. And a radio call went round saying, okay, they're through, let them in. We don't want this to turn nasty. That's another possibility. No particular person can say for sure exactly what happened on Capitol Hill on the 6th. No one who wasn't there, no one who isn't part of the police, who isn't part of the protesters, can say for sure what happened. And Vox getting up here writing this article is just inherently disingenuous, right? At least I'll tell you if something's my own opinion and not a complete fact, right? In comparison, police in DC arrested 427 people between May the 30th and June the 2nd last year, the peak of the uprising that came in response to the police killings of Black people like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. The highest number of arrests, 289, came on June the 1st when a curfew was set at 7 p.m. This was the same day that Trump authorized the use of tear gas on peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square to take a photo of a Bible outside of St. John's Church. But when the curfew came at 6 p.m. on January the 6th, extremists were still roaming around downtown and police didn't make widespread arrests. But that could, again, right, there's a number of reasons of why this may be. Why was it that loads of Black Lives Matter protesters were arrested, and yet a minority of Trump protesters were arrested, right? Could it have anything to do with the fact that BLM, during the 6 months that they were on a complete rampage throughout the United States, managed to literally burn down cities? Could it have been to do with the millions, maybe even billions of dollars of property damage that was committed by an absolute horde of dispossessed Black Americans, as opposed to, 1 or 2 hours of protesting outside the Capitol building by Trump protesters, which caused a minute amount of property damage in comparison to BLM, right? These two events aren't comparable. Number one, when it comes to the Trump protest, I think the death toll was about six. 6 people died. So I've heard, right? A woman was shot in the neck by the police. A police officer was trampled by the crowd. As opposed, how many have died during BLM? How many people died during BLM? That's my only question. Anyway, here's some more photos from that fairly glorious day, actually. Oh, this was BLM. So while some people were still wondering how this happened, others, especially Black people and other people of color, grew indignant watching the coup attempt unfold online and on TV. Well, I don't know how you commit a coup at the Capitol building, with the wrong people were in attendance in order to commit a coup. I don't see how a coup could have happened. There was no calls for a coup before the protest. None of the protesters came equipped for a coup. And the word insurrection seems to have been applied to this event retroactively. So was it really a coup, or are you just projecting the intent of a coup onto them? Again, listen, Vox, I don't know, man. I think you might be a bit biased. So for activists who endured violence at the hands of the police, they were merely asking for help to stop executing Black people. This inequity is why they protested in the first place. But yet we will never see a protest against the execution of the white lady that was present at the Capitol Hill protest. No. Oh, because white people aren't executed en masse by the police in America. Oh, what, really? Oh, well, that's new to me, because I've seen scores of videos of white people being shot dead for suspecting them to have a firearm, suspecting them to be a threat, simply not following orders. There's one video that will stick in my mind forever of an autistic boy who was made. He had a SWAT team called on him, and he was drawn from his apartment, and he was made to crawl towards the officers. And he was just a mentally ill autistic boy, clearly freaking out in this situation, But one wrong move, he moved his arm wrong, and he was shot dead. The guy didn't have a gun, and he was white. But we won't talk about that. No, we'll just focus on the Black people, because even when white people en masse decide to do something, to take a stand, to express their dissent and discontent with the way the establishment has handled the election, even when they do this out of desperation, you still make it all about Black people. It's almost as if you have a fetish. Anyway, it says white folks and white supremacists are treated with deference when they engage in violence and put the Capitol under siege. Again, it wasn't a siege. They weren't equipped for a siege. The whole event lasted 2-3 hours. A siege is a multi-week long event where they hold a position against overwhelming odds. That just didn't happen. It would have been days, it would have been weeks. They weren't equipped for it. They didn't have food. They didn't have supply lines. They didn't have weapons. They didn't have weapons that they were willing to use. Malina Abdullah, a co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, told Vox, but activists who are attempting to elevate the sanctity of Black life are treated with disdain. Well, are you trying to elevate the sanctity of Black life, or are you trying to, lower the sanctity of white life? There are many details that remain unclear about botched protocol on Wednesday, why the National Guard wasn't activated sooner, why police reportedly had no intelligence on what the extremists had planned. But the fact that the people are searching for answers as to why white people attempted to claim what they believed they own proves that white supremacy is functioning, as it always has, unfiltered and out in the open. You know what, Vox? You're goddamn right. You're goddamn right it is. In fact, white supremacy is stronger than it's ever been. And you should be afraid of it as an American. You should be afraid of it. As a lefty, as a liberal, you should be fucking shaking in your boots right now. Please excuse my language. But from the events of January the 6th, I think you need to be aware that you're far outnumbered. You are far outnumbered by more capable people than yourself. It took BLM 6 months to get a few street names changed. And yet in an hour, in 2 hours, the Trump base could storm the Capitol. That should really tell you something about the side of history you're on, Vox. So why don't you think about that for 2 seconds before you run your mouth? As I reported in September, research from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project found that out of 7,750 BLM protests across 2,400 locations across the country, 93% of them were peaceful. Yet images of burning and headlines of looting were plentiful, with the president referring to these protesters as thugs. Yeah, they were thugs that were protesting the death of a thug. George Floyd was a thug. The what was his name? Raz, from Seattle, who started the Chaz. He was a thug. He was a gangster. Pictures of him circulating online, posing with an AK-47. Took over your autonomous zone, your little liberal utopia. Didn't end very well, did it? New research from the organization compares the difference in law enforcement response between left-wing protests, anti-Trump, pro-Biden, count every vote, Black Lives Matter, and abolish ICE, and right-wing protests, pro-Trump, anti-Biden, back the blue, QAnon, stop the steal, etc., finding that law enforcement was more than twice as likely to use force against liberal demonstrations between May and November, researchers wrote. So, without getting too heavy into statistics here, you said there was 7,750 BLM protests, of which 93% of that was peaceful, which means there's still a few hundred non-peaceful protests. And then you complain when there was more police action, more police presence at these violent protests than there was at one peaceful Trump protest. But the cognitive dissonance is just lost on these people. It's just lost on these people. The evidence bears out anecdotally for the many activists and BLM protesters who joined these demonstrations throughout the year. According to Abdullah, a December child-led protest she organized in Los Angeles resulted in violence from the police. The police were sicked on us and they made a beeline for our children, Abdullah explained. They tackled one of our 72-year-old elders and stomped on him. Oh no, not the tribe elder. They tackled the tribe elder. That's awful. And then the people who came to his aid were beaten and arrested. According to Abdullah, police arrested a trans sister involved in the demonstration and threatened to book them into the men's central jail. There was no decency, Abdullah said. Oh, what an appeal to emotion. Abdullah, you're really tugging on my heartstrings. I really empathize with you right now. But a bit of constructive criticism, Abdullah. Maybe if you didn't belong to a violent organization, Black Lives Matter, the same organization that decades ago didn't just storm the Capitol, but bombed it, maybe these things wouldn't happen to you. You the thing is, Abdullah, you get out of life what you give into it, right? And if you go into life as an entitled Black supremacist who supports a violent organization, then you're going to get a bit of pushback for that, my love. The scene was common in 2020 and looks similar to what happened in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014 and Selma, Alabama in 1965. Photo roundups were packed with images of officers clad in riot gear, moving to corner BLM protesters and put their backs against the wall based. Other haunting images showed officers destroying the water bottles that the protesters used to wet their eyes after they were tear gassed or colluding with the far right. These are all very serious accusations, Fox. Counter-protesters in some instances, police kettled protesters to make arrests, a tactic of herding them into a confined space so they can't escape. These images might have shocked liberal white viewers, but they were in line with what activists have been fighting against all along. While the number of BLM protests has dropped since the summer, protests against wearing masks and false claims of election fraud, primarily attended by white people, have risen this fall, with little police interference. Now, I think it is a good thing, at least, that Vox can acknowledge that white people have two brain cells to rub together, that the majority of anti-mask protesters are white, that the majority of anti-election fraud protesters are white, because historically, white people have been able to do math and we're able to look at statistics and infer information from them. You know, when we look at the effectiveness of a mask, we say, well, that doesn't add up. When we look at the American election, we say, that doesn't add up. Because we're very good with numbers, white people, believe it or not. Unlike some other protest groups that I'll refrain from mentioning. But protests remain stronger when they've not disturbed by violence or the threat of it. According to the Washington Post, 14,000 protesters were arrested between late May and late June last year. At Stop the Steal rallies largely attended by far-right pro-Trump supporters, the police fit in. They wave flags with thin blue lines to show support and vow to back the blue. The two groups are allies. Meanwhile, at BLM protests, protesters speak against the actions of law enforcement, automatically positioning officers as a counter-protesting force, a force meant to uphold the status quo. This dynamic influences how police handle each group. Today's insurrection and coup, so it's not an insurrection now and it's not a coup, it's an insurrection and a coup rolled into one, by hundreds of pro-Trump supporters is one more example of the hypocrisy in our country's law enforcement response to protests. BLM, Black Lives Matter's global network said in a statement, "Make no mistake, if the protesters were black, we would have been tear gassed, battered, and perhaps shot." Well, there you go. We've got a little bit here about dismantling Hello. I'm terribly sorry about that. We had some slight technical issues. Of course, it wouldn't be the full English breakfast if we didn't. But it looks like we didn't lose too many viewers. Let's see who's still about. 37. We've got 18, 21. Okay. All right, that's not too bad. We can deal with it. We'll roll with the punches, right? Thank you all for staying, by the way. Thank you for staying. Thank you for not clicking off. So let's read some of yours comments about this article then. Lots of Fs. Gavin says there is less violence on average at white protests because we fundamentally know how to behave in a civil manner. They don't. End of. True. We did invent civility, that's for sure. James Werner says pigs know if they are caught engaging in political targeting. That looks really bad on the international stage. I think that played a big part. I think it played a big part in the reason why there was such little police pushback at the protesters. Simply because I given the events of this year, I really don't think police violence, especially police violence that's being broadcast around the world, would be the best course of action for them from a purely optics and business point of view, right? Let's see. Silence says, this is why they can only talk in terms of Harry Potter references. Their entire worldview is built on a fantasy narrative. Yeah, and even when they do talk about events that are based in reality, they're not talking about Harry Potter. They still have to spin this yarn, don't they? They still have to spin this yarn, tell this tale that was blatantly not true. Hello, Jules Citizen is here. He says, sex in Botswana has been decriminalized thanks to Donald J. Trump. Powerful. Oh, gay sex. Yeah. Yes, that's because Trump's our guy, Jules. That's because Trump is our guy, didn't you know? Dodo says, maybe the police didn't do too much because they actually fear pissing the white man off far more than the blacks, who in a year have burned down a couple of Walmarts and a Wendy's. Good point. As I said, in 6 months' time, it's taken Black Lives Matter that long to change a few street names, and yet within an hour, the white man is sitting in Congress like no one can stop him, right? All right, let's move on then. Speaking of black people, that's a terrible segue. That is a terrible segue. In other news, Uganda is taking a stand. Now, some of you may be aware about this. Uganda's access to Facebook has been shut down. Twitter has been shut down in the run-up to their election. Obviously, in an attempt at tech censorship. Tech censorship is something that's happening all around the world at the minute at a very elevated rate. I think it was something like 70,000 Twitter accounts have been banned in the last few days. And you add that to the amount of YouTube accounts that have been banned. You add that to the amount of content creators that have been silenced. And you add that to people like even the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, has been deplatformed by these people. But Uganda has decided, no, enough's enough. They're not buying it. So on Tuesday, Uganda punched back at Facebook and Twitter by banning them from the internet after the two companies started censoring Uganda officials ahead of the election in the country. Now, this is something that goes directly in line with something that I've been talking about for a while now, okay? Is this kind of interplay between countries and companies. And the next few years is going to be really pivotal in telling who comes out on top, right? Is the world going to be ruled by tech companies? Is it going to be ruled by huge multinational companies? Or is it going to be ruled by the countries, which is how it's functioned up until now? But we're at such a point in history, and this hasn't ever happened before, that companies can actually, have this much influence over the happenings in a country. they're almost more powerful than these governments. I would say that Facebook and Twitter, I mean, I don't know the wealth of Uganda, the GDP of Uganda, but big tech, there's a lot of money flowing through big tech, definitely more than some small African nation, right? I don't know if that's the case with Uganda, but somewhere like Somaliland, for instance, very possible. And but yeah, it looks like Uganda are fighting back. So I think this is a good thing. Good on them. Good on them. I'm a bit jealous that they have an ethno state, but I would like an ethno state. So they've decided to ban Twitter and Facebook from the internet.
Against the government and the NRA.
Can we get some subtitles for this?
We demand that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram write officially to these individuals, and since they have cited a government entity, Ministry of Information, we demand that Facebook and Twitter write to the Ministry of Information and ICT to provide reasons why they unilaterally, without applying the rule of natural justice, the right to fair hearing accorded to these individuals or indeed to the government of Uganda. Because many of these people are on official platform of communication of the government of Uganda, and therefore they cannot be accused of being robots meant to unfairly influence the election, especially if you have not written to us, asking us to prove that indeed these individuals exist. Very, very surprising. They also went for private individuals. One of the people, some of the people, you know them, a musician, an entertainer, a celebrity in town, full figure. Full figure, all of us know her, most of us in the media know her, that she's a musician who exists. She records herself usually with groups that are of interest to her. Could be chapati sellers.
Yeah, I'm not getting a word of this, guys. I don't know about you. African country is a good point, Nora. Thank you for All right, we crashed again, guys. We'll see how long we can drag this out. I may have to call it early, I'm afraid. I may have to call it early. We're struggling. We are struggling this morning, that's for sure. But we'll continue as long as we can. So, yeah. Press 1 in chat if I should stick it out for the hour. See if we can manage for an hour, shall we? Yeah, Matt, it's the connection. It's the internet connection. I'm not sure why. I'm pretty much plugged directly into the wall with an Ethernet cable. There's no reason that this should be happening, but it continues to happen. So I couldn't tell you what it is. But if we are having connection issues, I guess we'll just skip over to the more important articles. We'll get the important stuff out of the way, right? And I'll spend all day fiddling with my router to try and fix this problem, because it's not on, is it? I'm meant to be doing a stream, and I can't even connect to the internet. So we're going to be talking a little bit about COVID for the rest of the show. Everyone knows that's my favorite topic. So this next one might be a little bit black pilling for you, but you just bear with it, okay? So this is some new statistics, new data from the government. Oh wow, we love the data from the government. We love data, man. Bear in mind this is coming directly from Sky News, so take it with a pinch of salt. It can't be. That's a good point, Timmy. Could be turning my camera off. We could do with that. So let's try this then. So this is coming from Sky News. So take it with a pinch of salt. It's probably propaganda. All right, so compliance with restrictions is at its highest point since the first lockdown, new data has revealed. The Prime Minister recently said that more may have to be done if rules were not being followed, but compliance appears high. So here's a little video. I'm not sure how long this is.
The government hopes that tough enforcement of the rules will stop the spread of the virus. So what does
what a fucking soy boy.
data tell us about the scale of non-compliance?
Look at this guy.
This chart shows the number of journeys planned on Apple Maps in the last year. And you can see it plummeted during the first lockdown. And then over here, it fell again during the second lockdown. It's now at its lowest point since April.
They're literally graphing out the destruction of our society and celebrating it on the news. This is where we're at in the UK.
It doesn't tell us where people were travelling to. Are they going to illegal raves or dropping their kids off at nursery? For that, we can use survey data. Unfortunately, we have an amazing resource, the COVID-19 social study, which regularly asks more than 70,000 people about their experience of lockdown.
I love social studies.
Are the headline results on compliance. And this yellow line here represents complete compliance. Basically, more than half of people say they follow the rules all the time. This blue line up here.
Yeah, but to be fair, they would say that, wouldn't they?
It's really high, 96%, because almost everyone says they follow the rules.
I like the little Fed in the background there.
The gap between the two is where people bend the rules and add their own tweaks and modifications. And yeah, there's definitely quite a bit of that. But stepping back, this is a picture of really good compliance. And in fact, due to recent rises, compliance is now at its highest level since April.
It's at its highest level, guys. The society is complying.
And I just want to highlight one fact for you. There's so much interesting detail here. For example, men comply much less than women. But this is really important. Key workers say they comply 49% of the time. That is 10 percentage points less than non-key workers.
10 percentage points less.
Really might look at, especially now the definition of key worker is so much bigger. Thanks to this amazing study, we also have data on which rules people break. The yellow bit.
This is interesting.
When people say they never follow a particular rule. And you can see the rules that people are most likely to break are meeting up outdoors and also meeting up indoors, which is much more dangerous.
How? How does it matter where you meet? That's not how viruses work, you absolute numbnuts.
The data suggests that most people following the rules. It does make you wonder, how much effect will cracking down on the small minority have on the spread of the virus compared to just changing the rules for everyone?
Wow, powerful, really powerful. Oh my God. There's certain people in this world, right, that when they tell me to do something, I go out of my way not to do it just to spite them. And I think this guy, he falls into that category, without a doubt. So compliance with coronavirus rules has risen sharply since December. It is now at its highest point. We know this, okay? Pretty much just going through what he explained to us there. Now, my take on this is, again, for a multitude of reasons, okay? People are not complying because, well, people are complying because, number one, it's the winter, it's cold. People can't really be bothered with the hassle of it right now, which isn't the best mentality to have, but it is, unfortunately, the mentality people do have, right? People are more likely to not comply during the summer because they want to go out, they want to enjoy the sunshine, they want to enjoy it with their friends, they want to go down the pub, they want a few drinks in the park. You can't stop them from doing that. And if you try and stop them from doing that, you're going to encounter a bit of pushback. I think you're going to encounter a hell of a lot more pushback than you encountered last year because people have had to deal with this for nearly 12 months straight. Now, during the winter, obviously, these things aren't a factor. People kind of just want to go to work, go to the shops, come home, have a nice quiet night with their family, few drinks indoors. That's the attitude. That's the attitude of the British people. That's British culture, man. That doesn't change regardless of COVID, regardless of lockdowns. We're going to do what we've always done regardless of anything that you tell us. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take it as a black pill. Obviously, it's coming from Sky. Obviously, it's propagandized to a heavy degree. They want you to believe that the majority of people are following the rules because they're scared of the virus. I don't think that's true. I think if they were to poll the British people on how many people are actually scared of this virus, you would find they're in the minority, right? The majority of people that are going along with it. And I think this from my own anecdotal experience. Can't say this with any degree of authority, but when I talk to people, the majority opinion seems to be, yeah, the virus exists. Yeah, it can kill people. I don't mind doing these restrictions if it protects other people, but I don't think it comes out of a place of fear. Not like they're trying to bill it in the media, like they've been billing it in the media for, oh God, how long has it been now? Since this time last year, actually. But anyway, we've got more to talk about on this topic. Some very concerning developments, actually. Those of you who are more following the PA side of things that I've covered on my channel, obviously Patriotic Alternative, very positive organization. The leaders of Patriotic Alternative, Mark and Laura, I'm sure everyone knows, had their bank accounts taken down. Why were their bank? Laura's bank account was shut down. Why was her bank account shut down? Well, it was shut down because she is a political dissident, because she talks about issues that the establishment would rather you not talk about. She was shut down because she advocates for positions that the establishment has deemed too far outside the Overton window to ever be acceptable. Now, for me, the most worrying thing about that was the precedent that it set. It shows that, you know, banks are political entities at this point. They are political entities, and they reserve the right to restrict your access to your wealth. Okay, and this is a problem. This has always been a problem with banks. How can you ever trust anyone else with your money? Why are we more likely to trust a bank with our money than ourselves? If I came up to you tomorrow and I said, hey, why don't you just give me your net worth? I'll put it in a little box under my stairs and I won't touch it, I promise, right? You'd laugh in my face. And yet we trust banks with our money. Why? Why? The banks have a greater track record of robbing people than I do, you know. But anyway, my what we're getting to here is the fact that HSBC, okay, and anyone who has a HSBC bank account, you know, this may make you think otherwise, have decided that they're going to start shutting down customers' bank accounts who refuse to wear face masks. Not just asking them to leave the establishment. No. They are withdrawing their accounts. Now, this is very serious. The lender reiterated that face masks are mandatory in all branches unless legally exempt, warning customers that non-compliance could result in accounts being closed. Dodo brings up a good point. He says your bank account will be closed, your rent will be refused, leading to you being evicted. You won't be able to buy things from stores, you won't be able to work. You will be depersoned for not complying. And you will literally be depersoned. You'll be removed from social media, your freedom of speech taken off you, your access to your wealth taken off you, and by proxy, your access to housing, to pay your rent, pay your mortgage, etc. Unless you already own your house outright, this is a very dangerous situation for the majority of people in this country. HSBC has issued a warning to customers as retailers step up coronavirus safety measures amid a further 1,243 deaths. The lender, which also owns First Direct and Marks and Spencer Bank, said customers who break the law could forfeit their bank account. Speaking to the Mirror, a spokesman said face masks are mandatory in all branches as per government guidelines. Those who refuse to comply will be refused service and could have their bank accounts withdrawn. Jackie Yui, head of branch network HSBC UK, said our branch colleagues are key workers, continuing to go in our branches every day so customers who need them can access essential financial services. Sadly, some people are failing to protect themselves. Our branch colleagues and other customers by refusing to wear a mask inside our branch or observe social distancing. Our colleagues deserve respect and should not have faced violent or abusive behavior. Well, what about your customers? You're worried about your colleagues facing violent or abusive behavior. What about your customers? What about the abusive behavior you're exhibiting towards your customers? Consider the phrase, the customer is always right. When did that phrase disappear from normality? It continues. Consider whether you need to visit the branch or could manage your banking from the safety of your home via our digital channels. If you do visit us, please wear a face covering and maintain a safe distance from others. If individuals put themselves or our colleagues at risk without a medical exemption, we reserve the right to withdraw their account. It should be illegal. It should be illegal. The Mirror has also asked Santander, Barclays, Lloyds, NatWest, and Nationwide for updated guidance, and we'll update this story in due course. So you could probably, hedge your bets and say that all of these banks as well may follow suit. The Post Office said customers must obey the law, but warned it will not be enforcing measures. So you'll still be able to send the post, right? Postmasters say they can ask a customer who is not wearing a face mask if they are exempt, but the customer is not required to provide medical proof if they do not have it with them when they visit a branch. So Post Office being a bit more lenient. I would honestly recommend everybody print off an exemption card. Because if you are exempt, right, print off an exemption card and apply it liberally. That's what I'll say. I don't wear a mask, but I have my exemption card on hand in my wallet as and when the time arises. And before you ask, okay, I am medically exempt, all right, and you're in no place, to question that, because that's a little thing called discrimination of the disabled. Okay, so you just have to take my word for it, bigot. Yeah, bit of advice from old Reaver. Another bit of advice from old Uncle Reaver is, and this is not financial advice. This is just advising you to ask yourself a question. Why do you trust banks with your money? Surely having your wealth invested in a depreciating asset like fiat currency is a bad idea. And so you probably want to look at alternatives. I'm not going to tell you what those alternatives are. I think you already know. But listen, we've seen people have their bank accounts withdrawn for being right-wing in this country. We see people's bank accounts now being withdrawn for not wearing a mask in this country. You know, how long is it before other things get your bank account taken off you? But yeah, looks like this new lockdown is the government is taking it more seriously. The companies are taking it more seriously as well. This problem is highlighted by the fact that Cressida Dick, everyone's favorite, Cressida Dick has said that officers will help supermarkets enforce mask rules if customers become rowdy, despite forces saying that they don't have enough staff, as Tesco, Asda, and Waitrose also reintroduce bouncers, and John Lewis scraps click and collect. Return of guards represents a return to the stricter enforcement at the start of the first lockdown in March. Meanwhile, John Lewis announced today that it also banned click and collect. Some shoppers today were seen still not wearing masks, although the vast majority complied with the rules. Cressida Dick said it was preposterous. People couldn't know rules, as vowed to continue wider crackdown. So the shops that will be reintroducing bouncers are Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Tesco, Asda, Waitrose, and M&S. Now, I was saying this yesterday. If you're watching the stream yesterday, you would have heard my little rant about shops. Okay, do your shopping at Lidl. I love Lidl. The price is cheap, and you don't get any hassle. No one asks you to wear a mask. There's no bouncers. There's a bit of tape on the floor because I think they're just doing the bare minimum that they need to do, and it's great. It's a nostalgic shopping experience. If you're nostalgic for 2019 before all of this madness, I recommend doing your weekly at Lidl. Okay. Yeah, interesting article. Interesting article. As you can see here, this is quite a very descriptive photo. It's a very descriptive representation of life in modern Britain. You can see here two fine British citizens that they exude Britishness, shopping at Lidl. You know, they're so sterile. I'm not sure if I said this on stream before, but one of the things that really shocked me about the modern shopping experience is how sterile it is. Now, shops have never been a lively place, right? Supermarkets, they've never been a particularly lively place. But I distinctly remember walking into a supermarket some months ago, and it was silent. No one was talking. It was as if they were scared of talking, as if talking would project the virus onto everybody. Everyone had masks on, right? So it was all quiet. Everyone had masks on, and the place smelled like bleach. There was so much hand sanitizer floating around. You could smell it in the air. And I closed my eyes for a minute, and I thought, I can't tell whether I'm in a shop or I'm in a hospital. The only sound penetrating that silence was the occasional beep 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 of the checkout, which could have easily been the beep 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 of some kind of medical machine, right? You just don't know anymore. It's so confusing. Anyway, let's read some of the comments. Scory33 said, yeah, I just caught the last few years of it as well. It was a good pile of cash. I think you're talking about that comment about Ethereum back there, weren't you? Dual Citizen says, Bitcoin, precious metals in physical form only, and even alcohol in some cases. limited edition whiskey. That's a really good shout, actually, and a good point on the gold as well. I know a lot of people that buy gold, but they don't actually possess it, right? They'll buy a piece of paper that's basically proof of ownership of gold, which is, it's the same as keeping your money in a bank. How can you trust the person holding that gold to give it to you when the time comes? It doesn't happen, right? Illuminata says, don't overlook Ethereum if buying crypto, the second biggest buy in the market after Bitcoin. Yeah, Ethereum, I think, rose up to something like 1,500, maybe. It was touching 1,500, but there's been a bit of a dip recently. So, you know, if you're interested in crypto, the market right now is cheaper than it has been for, you know, the last few days, last few weeks. But hey, I can't predict what happens after that. Nora says, I think I've seen this in a movie. It was called 1984. Yeah, I think I've seen that one as well. Perfidious says, 5 years time, bank accounts will be withdrawn for being white. Oh. Don't put that thought into my head, Albion, mate. Okay. So let's move on. I'll read one more article before we finish up for today. I said I'll only go for an hour. We've been having connection troubles. I don't really want to tempt fate, but we've got a, let's see. Yeah, we've got a good one here. So it looks like, you know, Tony Blair. We all know Tony Blair, Nigel Farage's best mate, Tony Blair. He wants to be put in charge of the vaccine program. He's really into his vaccines for some reason or another. Well, this article is from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, which, if that doesn't sound like the worst, the hellish institute, then I don't know what does. So this is direct from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Fuck. Why does this exist? Right, so COVID-19, a plan for vaccine acceleration. Introduction. A new strain of COVID-19 has now been proven to have a higher transmissibility. It almost certainly is the reason behind a massive surge of cases across the United Kingdom. This makes the need to rapidly accelerate the rollout of vaccines to as many people as possible even more urgent. Indeed, we must do all we can to suppress transmission through vaccination in order to reduce the likelihood of further mutations that could be even more transmissible, or worse still, more deadly. Well, you know what? If more deadly means that it becomes even slightly deadly, then I'll have to agree with you. But right now, COVID-19 is probably the least deadly virus I've ever seen in my life. And bear in mind, you know, I've seen swine flu, bird flu, SARS, Ebola, Zika. You know, COVID-19, it ain't all that, mate. It really ain't all that. So almost 1 million people in the United Kingdom have received their first dose vaccination against COVID-19. This is a Herculean effort from the NHS, which must be applauded. Clap for the NHS, guys. But in the situation we face, it is unfortunately not sufficient. This is hard to hear given the unprecedented achievements in the development and deployment of the vaccine to date, but it is necessary. We must scrutinize every individual element of the vaccine supply and logistical chain, making every possible gain. This objective sat behind our recent call to increase the supply of vaccines by shifting towards a first dose to many strategy that would increase the time between doses, but ensure more people are covered by the substantial immunity provided by the initial vaccine. Ooh, try saying that after a couple of drinks. Where a second dose is proven to increase further immunity, as with the 3 main approved COVID-19 vaccines, they must be supplied and provided to each person as soon as is practical. The government has taken up this recommendation. In this paper, we make further recommendations, which, if implemented, would dramatically accelerate the vaccination program. These recommendations cover 4 key areas of a vaccine rollout plan. So this is what the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change recommends we do. maximize the quantity of vaccines and the speed at which they're available, using the largest number of venues in the right areas to reach as many people as possible, recruiting and training the largest number of people possible to safely administer the vaccines, and preparing data captured and data sharing systems to garner insight and ensure a safe invitation, recall, and recording of vaccines. So the Tony Blair Institute is really pushing towards the vaccine maximalist strategy. They really want to get this to as many people as humanly possible. They say that if their recommendations are followed by the end of January, they'll be aiming for 3 million vaccinations per week, which is a massive uptick. That is a gigantic uptick in the amount of people being vaccinated as fresh supplies of the vaccines are received. They want to manage public expectations by clearly and transparently setting out what the vaccine doses will be available and by when. This should be done by publishing within the next week a table similar to the one we have included in the supply section. Government and suppliers should move to a posture of being able to press go on future vaccines. This means stress testing their supply lines and delivery mechanisms and having as many vaccines stored and ready to roll out the minute they are approved. This is crazy. Future vaccines. It just goes to show the government knows for a fact, right? Let's say under the best case scenario, right? I'm wrong. COVID's a real threat. It's a real thing. Best case scenario, it means that the government knows for a fact that the Pfizer vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine are going to have very, very limited effectiveness at combating a virus. You know, they're planning for future vaccines. They know this vaccine isn't going to do jack, right? They know that. Now, worst case scenario, what does the future look like? Are we injected with a new vaccine every single week? I mean, I don't know. Some clarity would go a long way in this regard. Oh, but no, keep publishing BBC articles where you strawman vaccine skeptics. It's insane. Like my main opinion is that the vaccine is going to be injecting Bill Gates microchips into the bloodstream, which is absolutely ridiculous. But it's the only argument that you can address because you know I'm correct. Settings. Introduce vaccination stations across the UK using polling stations as a blueprint. Find out where your local polling station is, guys, and avoid it like a plague. Ensure GP surgeries receive all the support to ensure as many possible form part of the vaccination process. I would much rather if my GP surgery looked after, you know, the old people in my area, people with health issues, like, you know, heart disease, cancer, etc., dementia. You know what GP surgeries are generally there for. Expand the vaccination distribution to all pharmacies, regardless of their size, by removing the weekly 1,000 dose threshold. Utilize currently unoccupied viable office space as a setting from which to administer. They want to recruit 30,000 vaccinators, establish one common e-learning platform for all volunteers, which would then be topped up with in-person training at hub sites. Agree effective oversight of the training and staffing of the vaccination sites, which would include a mixture of NHS staff, volunteers, and ambulance service. Clearly and transparently set out how many additional staff are still needed where gaps are identified. They want to identify and deploy one system to capture and store all the data possible on COVID-19 and the vaccination process. Issue clear guidance for all those involved in treating, testing, and vaccinating to ensure that the right information is captured. Make publicly available emerging trends and patterns on COVID-19 to help underpin government action. Identify and deploy one platform for COVID Pass. Identify and deploy one platform for a COVID Pass. This should give each individual the capability to show online or offline their current COVID status on testing and whether this individual has been vaccinated. Offer a COVID pass on a voluntary basis to those able to display negative COVID testing status or that they have been vaccinated exempt from restrictions. Make anonymized data available for researchers and healthcare professionals around the world to assist. So there you go, basically saying in their own words that your health passport. You know that digital health passport they said wasn't going to happen? Yeah, it's happening, guys, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. So you know, I think there comes a time, right? You know, this is a long article, and we're keeping it to an hour, but I just want to finish up by making the point of there comes a time when we're going to have to ask ourselves a question. We're going to have to be honest with ourselves. What is more important to us? Okay, is standing for this principle more important to you? The principle of bodily autonomy, your freedom to pick and choose what goes in or out of your body, right? The sovereignty of the individual. Is that more important to us than our freedom of movement, our freedom to go abroad, our freedom to own a bank account, maybe even our freedom to go to the shops? You know, HSBC withdrawing people's accounts. How long until Sainsbury's, Asda, Tesco withdraw the right for you to buy food? There comes a time when we actually have to ask ourselves how dedicated we are to this, and how much we're willing to sacrifice for this. I know where I stand on this, and I think probably you guys want to ask yourself too, because up until now it's been very easy to kind of criticize things online, show your dissent online, while in your personal life, in real life, you've managed to keep your head down, right? Maybe you don't wear a mask, but you kind of, you know, hide it a bit. You do what you can, where you can. That's not going to become possible for very much longer. You know, you're going to have to ask, well, are you going to get the vaccine? If you do get a vaccine, then you're going to be free. You're going to be a good little citizen operating in line with the party. And yeah, but if you don't, then you're an enemy. You're an enemy of the state. And yeah, they put you in that position. They backed you against the wall. But like any dog backed against the wall, you know, it tends to bite back. And I think that's what we can count on. I think that's what we can hope for. I know I'm going to show my dissent to this in every way possible. I know a large proportion of you, a large proportion of people that maybe don't even watch my channel are going to stand shoulder to shoulder with me in that regard. And that's why I'm not feeling so negative about this. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I said, you know, I was in a call with somebody yesterday, and I said, what we need in this country is for the states to just push things that one bit too far too soon. Because as soon as they do that, then the tide will turn. The tide will turn. I'm convinced of it. There is a such thing. There is a line. I think there is a line. The British people, that line is quite far back. We're quite tolerant. We're willing to put up with a lot, but the government, when they ask for an inch and they take a mile, don't they? And I don't even think there's an inch left before they hit that line. But either way, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you all for joining me for this hour. I'm very sorry about the connection issues. Tomorrow we'll try and do the full 2 hours with the camera on. I'll spend some time fiddling with my router, see if we can sort out this problem. Either way, thank you all for joining me this morning. It's been a very nice show. It's been very nice talking with you all. We've had very good numbers despite the tech problems, so thank you for sticking it out, guys. I want to say a thank you to the top 3 over on DLive, our top 3 contributors. We've got JC Staling with 314 lemons, Philomena with 10, and Noctis. It doesn't show me the rest of your name, I'm sorry, but thank you for the 5 lemons. Those are our top 3 contributors. We'll be back again, same time, same place, tomorrow at 11 for another episode of the Full English Breakfast. Have a wonderful day, guys, and I will see you soon.